The first time I realized the ground beneath me was shifting wasn't when my name was missing from the monthly client report. It wasn't even when the executive assistant, who I had trained, suddenly started leaving me off calendar invites. No, the real moment hit like a cold slap when I walked into the boardroom for a Monday briefing and found him, the CEO's son, Adam, sitting in my chair, legs sprawled out, snapping a selfie with his phone angled high. All mine soon. He typed with a smirk, hitting post before I even set down my coffee. The room chuckled nervously, no one daring to correct him. That chair wasn't just leather and armrests. It represented 15 years of loyalty, sleepless nights during crises, and deals brokered with the kind of precision only experience earns. And here he was, treating it like a prop for his Instagram followers. I didn't flinch. Not in front of him. Not in front of the board. Instead, I did what I'd learned over years of surviving corporate storms. I smiled. A small, quiet smile that gave nothing away. Because if there's one thing you learn in this world, it's that the loudest person in the room is rarely the one in control. For context, I had built my career at this firm from the ground up. No nepotism, no golden parachutes, just grit and hours that bled into weekends. I had seen CEOs come and go, mergers rise and collapse, and I'd been the quiet anchor who kept everything steady. I didn't play politics. I didn't chase the spotlight. I believed, maybe naively, that results would always outweigh noise. But results, I was learning, didn't trend on social media. Adam wasn't hired, he was installed. Fresh from some overpriced MBA program he barely scraped through, armed with buzzwords he didn't understand, and a last name that excused every failure. He'd been at the firm less than 6 months and already strutted through the hallways like a crowned prince. And the CEO, his father, let it happen. I became Legacy Kelly. A polite nod in meetings, a hand wave in the background, like a fax machine humming in the corner. Not broken, but irrelevant. I should have felt anger. Maybe I did, deep down. But what I really felt was something sharper. Awareness. Awareness that arrogance never walks alone. It always drags carelessness behind it. And I knew how to watch. How to wait. How to listen. Now, pause here for a quick second. Because this is where people usually ask me, Kelly, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you storm into the CEO's office and demand respect? And the answer is simple. Because silence is sometimes louder than shouting. Because the moment you thrash, they label you emotional, unstable, replaceable. But if you sit, still and patient, you see things others miss. And I did see things. Adam loved to flaunt power he didn't understand. He paraded through the office making promises he couldn't keep. Innovations that were just copy-paste ideas stolen from staff decks, clients he assumed would stay loyal because of his last name. Every time he swaggered, he left a trail of missteps. Emails out of order, protocols skipped, conversations documented by people who weren't as loyal to him as he thought. I collected it all. Quietly. Not maliciously. Precisely. Because when you've given 15 years of your life to something, you don't walk out the moment a spoiled prince sits in your chair. You wait until the cards are on the table. The chair wasn't the breaking point. The selfie wasn't even the breaking point. It was the caption. All mine soon. He wasn't just mocking me. He was declaring war on everything I'd built, everything I'd protected. And the tragic part? He didn't even realize how dangerous that was for him. See, this firm wasn't just a company. It was a fortress of contracts, compliance, and federal filings that had to be handled with surgical precision. You couldn't swagger your way through a merger. You couldn't Instagram your way out of fiduciary duty. But Adam didn't know that. His father, drunk on pride, ignored it. And the rest of the staff? They were too afraid to whisper. Except me. Because while Adam thought the throne was waiting for him, he didn't realize there was still one piece of paper, signed and sealed, that no one had bothered to undo. And that piece of paper? It meant that the throne wasn't his to take. It was still mine. So when Adam leaned back in my chair, captioned, "All mine soon," and the interns laughed nervously, I didn't argue. I didn't rage. I didn't tell him that his little performance was about to cost him more than he could imagine. I just sat down at the edge of the table, pulled out my phone, and forwarded a single email. One that didn't scream, didn't accuse, didn't threaten. Just 4 lines, quiet as a whisper. 10 minutes later, the firm's lawyer stormed into the boardroom, face pale as paper, phone shaking in his hand. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Adam. He walked straight to the CEO, leaned down, and slid the phone across the polished table. The CEO read. His eyes widened. His jaw locked. Then he shouted so loud the glass trembled. "Caller, now." I didn't move. I just smiled into my coffee. Because this wasn't the beginning of my downfall. This was the beginning of theirs. The CEO's voice echoed in that boardroom long after the lawyer slipped the phone into his pocket. "Caller, now." No one moved. Not the partners, not the assistants taking fake notes on their iPads, not even Adam, who had suddenly stopped smirking. The only sound was the faint buzz of the overhead lights and the clicking of Adam's pen. Click, 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 like a nervous tell. I didn't move either. That's the thing about silence. It terrifies people who thrive on noise. Adam finally broke the tension. "Dad, it's fine. She's just bitter. She doesn't matter." His laugh was thin, forced, like he didn't believe his own words. The CEO didn't answer. He just glared at me, then at Adam, then back to the lawyer. The lawyer leaned closer, whispered something in his ear, and the color drained from his face. That was my cue. I gathered my notebook and coffee, nodded politely, and slipped out. I didn't need to hear the yelling that would follow. I didn't need to stay for the explanations, the excuses, or the scrambling, because I already knew how this game was played, and how it would end. For anyone listening, wondering what was in that email, let me back up. 6 months earlier, during a messy internal scandal, the board had voted me as interim managing partner. Not because they loved me, but because I was the only one they trusted not to sink the ship. There was paperwork, filings with the regulators, signatures from every partner. The kind of official documents you don't just misplace. And while the scandal faded, no one ever officially reversed that vote. Which meant, on paper, in the eyes of the law and the regulators, I still had more authority than Adam, than half the board, maybe even more than the CEO himself. The firm had tried to erase me with office politics, but they forgot the one place you can't erase someone, in legal filings. And that was the email I'd forwarded. Not a rant, not an angry resignation, just proof. 4 neat lines and 2 attachments. Quiet, precise, nuclear. Back at my desk, a desk they'd already downgraded to a windowless cubicle wedged beside the HR coordinator, I sat down and let the murmurs float through the hallway. I could feel the ripple even before I heard it. Doors closing, voices rising, calls being made. The kind of panic you can smell, like smoke from a fire no one wants to admit exists. Adam stormed past my cubicle 20 minutes later, his face blotchy red. He didn't look at me, but I heard him mutter into his phone. "She's lying. It doesn't mean anything. Fix it." Fix it. That's the arrogance of people who've never built anything themselves. They think rules bend, signatures vanish, and truth evaporates if you just fix it. But some things can't be fixed with a phone call. Some things are bigger than Instagram captions and LinkedIn posts. That night, I went home and poured myself a glass of cheap wine. My cat, a lazy old tabby, curled up beside me while I pulled out the folder I'd started keeping the moment Adam arrived. It wasn't revenge. At least not at first. It was insurance. Insurance against exactly this. Inside were copies of emails he'd ignored, protocols he'd skipped, compliance deadlines he'd treated like optional suggestions. I had notes from meetings where he promised clients returns that weren't even possible. Half-baked strategies that violated basic financial laws. None of it malicious. All of it reckless. And recklessness has consequences. As I sat there flipping through the papers, I thought about the 15 years I'd given this firm. The nights I stayed past midnight to reconcile margins, the weekends I sacrificed, the vacations I skipped, all for loyalty, for stability, for a paycheck that was never extravagant but steady, and in return, a chair stolen by a boy who'd never sweated for anything in his life. The message of this chapter of my life was sharp, simple, and brutal. Some people inherit thrones they don't deserve, but a crown built on arrogance is a crown that always slips. The next morning, the firm was buzzing like a disturbed hive. I walked in with my coffee as usual, calm, silent, invisible. But the whispers followed me down the hallway. Partners on their phones, assistants rushing, compliance officers pale and sweaty. Adam wasn't in his chair that morning. The CEO wasn't either. By noon, I heard the first rumor. The regulators had been contacted. By 2 the second, clients were already asking questions. And by 5 o'clock, the one that made me smile into my lukewarm coffee. The merger they'd been celebrating for months was now on hold. Because of me. Or rather, because of a mistake they made when they underestimated me. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I didn't even post. I just fed my cat, sat at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. Because this was only the beginning. And sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't loud. It's paperwork. The next few days felt like living inside a pressure cooker. You could almost hear the walls of the firm groaning under the weight of secrets no one wanted to acknowledge. On the surface, everything looked polished. Receptionists smiled. Emails went out. The stock ticker screens in the lobby kept flashing in corporate blue. But underneath, the air was thick with panic. By Wednesday, 3 separate people accidentally bumped into me near the elevators, junior associates I'd mentored years ago, each whispering the same thing. "Kelly, what's happening? Are we in trouble?" I just smiled and told them to keep doing their jobs, because that's what everyone needed to hear. But the truth? Yes, the firm was in trouble. Serious trouble, not because of me, but because of what arrogance does when it's left unchecked. Adam had continued to strut around as if nothing had changed, posting selfies, talking loudly in the cafeteria about new directions, bragging that he was redefining leadership. But the interns had stopped liking his posts. The staff had stopped laughing at his jokes. And the partners, they had started locking their doors when he walked past. That's when the cracks began to show. The first call came from Charles, one of our longest-standing clients. Old money, the kind of man who still signed checks by hand. He had been with the firm since before I joined. He trusted me. He never trusted Adam. I overheard the end of the conversation as Adam slammed his office door, red-faced and sweating. "What do you mean you're transferring funds?" He barked into the phone. "You can't just pull out, Charles. We're mid-merger." Silence. Then Adam's voice dropped to a whisper. No, she doesn't run things anymore. That's ancient history. I'm in charge now." But his voice cracked on the word charge. Even he didn't believe it. I knew then what Charles had asked. Clients don't care about boardroom gossip. They care about signatures. And on paper, my name was still there. Not his. Not even his father's. Mine. Later that afternoon, the firm's lawyer cornered me in the hallway. His tie was crooked, his phone buzzing endlessly in his hand. "Kelly," he muttered, voice low. "Do you realize what you've done?" I raised an eyebrow. "I sent an email, that's all." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "That email froze half our operations. Until the board formally resolves your authority, every deal Adams touched could be invalid. Clients are already spooked. Regulators are circling. Do you want this firm to collapse?" I looked him dead in the eye. Do I want it to collapse? Number, but I won't be erased. Not after 15 years. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, with a resigned shake of his head, he muttered, "You're not the problem, Kelly." "They are." And he walked away. That night, I went home to my quiet apartment and sat at my kitchen table, the same place I drafted that first email. My cat jumped up beside me, demanding attention, but I was lost in thought. I thought about the people in that firm, the young analysts who stayed late, the assistants who kept everything glued together, the clients who had trusted us with their livelihoods. They deserved better than Adam, better than the CEO who thought nepotism could be disguised as vision. And here was the cruel irony. I wasn't trying to burn it all down. I was just trying to be recognized, to be respected for what I had actually done. But in their blindness, they had set fire to themselves. The next morning, the CEO finally returned from his conference. I say conference, because everyone knew it was a golf retreat in Florida. He stormed through the building like a man rehearsing authority he no longer had. When he reached my cubicle, my windowless, humiliating cubicle, he didn't even lower his voice. "Kelly," he snapped, "we need to talk, now." I followed him into his office. Adam was already there, arms crossed, trying to look powerful but looking more like a child caught stealing cookies. The CEO shut the door and leaned across the desk. "You're putting us in a dangerous position. That paperwork, whatever you think it means, it's technical, symbolic. You were interim, nothing more. That doesn't make you managing partner." I kept my voice calm. "Then show me the reversal. Show me the filing where the vote was undone." Silence. Adam shifted uncomfortably. The CEO's face tightened. "There isn't one, is there?" I said softly. He slammed his fist on the desk. "This is bigger than you, Kelly. You're risking hundreds of millions." I met his fury with a steady gaze. "Number you risked it the day you put your son in charge of clients he wasn't qualified to speak to. All I did was remind the world of the truth." His phone buzzed violently on the desk. He glanced down, eyes widening, then shoved it aside without answering. Adam's voice broke the silence. "Dad, don't let her win. She's nothing. She's infrastructure." I almost laughed at the word. Infrastructure. The same word his father had once used, as if stability were an insult. I stood, smoothing my jacket. "Infrastructure keeps buildings standing. You'd do well to remember that." And then I left, because I knew something they didn't. The regulators were already moving. And when regulators move, no amount of shouting can stop them. By Friday morning, the building felt thinner. The receptionist's smile was tight, the kind you hold when you're bracing for a wave. It had posted a banner on everyone's screens overnight. "Temporary controls in effect. New commitments require legal pre-clearance." That sounds routine if you've never worked in finance. It isn't. It means the adults have taken the keys away. I swiped my badge. It beeped, slow and reluctant, before the light flashed green. Down the hall, Adam tried his. No beep. He laughed too loudly and waited for someone to let him in. No one did. At 9:12 a.m., an email hit my inbox from our outside counsel. Subject line, "Authority clarification. Urgent." The body was polite and surgical. A request to meet immediately to discuss interim control during the merger review window and a potential consent and ratification. In plain English, they wanted me to bless what had been done without me. I didn't respond right away. I made coffee, sat at my desk, and watched the hallway. People were walking faster. Phones were glued to ears. Compliance had set up in Conference B like a triage tent. Stacks of binders, someone printing org charts in real time, highlighters everywhere. At 10 o'clock, I walked into the conference room. Outside counsel, gray suit, no nonsense, stood to shake my hand. Our in-house lawyer looked like he'd slept in his clothes. The CEO sat at the head of the table, jaw clenched. Adam was in the corner, staring at his phone like it owed him an apology. Counsel started. "Kelly, thank you for coming. We'd like to resolve the ambiguity around officer authority. The cleanest path is a limited ratification. Board signs, you acknowledge. We file an ADV amendment today. That would stabilize counterparties and the merger team." I kept my voice even. "Acknowledge what exactly?" "That you were acting in April," he said, measured. "And that since then, executive authority transitioned in practice. The board will formalize it retroactively. Retroactively. The word hung in the air like a bad smell. The transition in practice, I said, included my office being moved to a cubicle and my name scrubbed from files. That's not governance. That's erasure. Show me the minutes that transferred control. Show me the vote. Silence. Paper rustled. The CEO cleared his throat. Kelly, this is bigger than ego. Clients are nervous. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. An email preview flashed from a client I'd onboarded a decade ago. Maya Anand, CFO of a family office. We noticed conflicting signatories on recent communications. Until clarified, we're suspending any new instructions. Please advise who holds authority. I placed the phone face down. They're not nervous because of me, I said. They're nervous because you told the market one story while the filings told another. Outside counsel exhaled. Then what do you need, Kelly? There it was. The first honest question all week. I need 3 things, I said. 1. An accurate filing today that reflects April's designation and the absence of reversal. 2. A board resolution that protects staff from fallout. No scapegoating assistants, analysts, or middle managers for decisions they didn't make. 3. A clear communication to clients acknowledging the transition will be handled lawfully, not cosmetically. Adam scoffed. You want a parade too? I turned to him. I want the truth on paper, the same place you tried to erase me. He pushed back from the wall. Why do you care? You're leaving anyway. That surprised him as much as it surprised the room. I hadn't said I was leaving. But we all heard it. I was already half gone. Outside counsel leaned forward. If we agree to your conditions, will you sign a targeted ratification for non-discretionary items? Payroll, vendor renewals, previously agreed client notices. Nothing strategic. That was realistic. Not everything should stall because a boy wanted a throne. I nodded once. Send the language. The meeting ended without shouting. That was almost worse. Shouting means people still believe force can fix reality. Paper either says what it says, or it doesn't. Back at my desk, I found 3 more messages from clients asking the same question in different fonts. Who is in charge? A junior I'd mentored pinged me on Slack. Are we safe? I typed back. Do your work, document everything. You're safe with your work. At 1:40 p.m., the internal newsletter, usually fluff about birthdays and charity runs, pushed a leadership update. It read like it had been written with oven mitts, an acknowledgement of April's acting designation, a promise to file an amendment, a note that, effective immediately, no new client commitments will be initiated without dual sign-off from legal and the acting managing partner. People read that twice. Acting managing partner. No one said my name. They didn't have to. At 2:05, Adam appeared at my cubicle, hat in hand energy disguised as swagger. Look, he said, glancing around. We can make this easy. You sign, I tell Dad to give you a clean exit. Bonus, glowing reference, whatever. Whatever, I repeated, looking at him. He was young enough to think deals were favors, not terms. Say yes, Kelly. No, I said. Say thank you. For what? For the quiet way I'm doing this. He didn't understand, which was the point. He left without slamming anything, which told me someone had told him to stop being loud. By late afternoon, the first public tremor hit. The merger partner filed a bland notice. Engagement under review pending governance clarification. Not a collapse. Not yet. Just a careful step back so their lawyers could breathe. Inside our building, it felt like an earthquake. I stayed until 7, answering only what I had to, drafting nothing emotional. On my walk home, the city hummed like usual. Couples argued about dinner. A cyclist cursed a taxi. Somewhere a kid laughed so hard it hiccuped. The world did not care about our filings. At my kitchen table, I fed the cat, opened my laptop, and read the draft ratification council had sent. It was narrow, as promised. Payroll, leases, utilities, previously noticed disclosures. I marked a few lines, asked for one clause, a sentence that would keep junior staff insulated from retroactive blame. I hit send. Then I opened a new document. Notice of transition and intent. One page. No venom. Just a calm sentence stating that once the filings were corrected, I would step aside formally, effective on a date that allowed for a clean handover. No surprises. No staged drama. The message was simple. I would not be the chaos. They already had enough of that. My phone vibrated on the table. A text from an unknown number. Are you happy? The screenshot attached was Adam's "All Mine Soon" post, now deleted. I typed back, "Be careful with captions. Paper lasts longer." Then I put the phone face down and let the apartment go quiet. Tomorrow would be the board meeting. A real one, with minutes and votes and names spelled correctly. My seat would be there. Not because anyone invited me. Because the law had. And I would take it, once more, on my terms. Saturday morning, the board convened in the largest conference room. Normally, those meetings buzzed with catered breakfasts and hollow laughter. Not this time. No pastries, no coffee, just a long table, a stack of papers, and faces lined with exhaustion. My nameplate was back. Not a gold plaque, not a throne, just a thin piece of cardstock that said, Kelly Anders, acting managing partner. It was enough. The CEO entered last, Adam trailing behind him. Adam's eyes were dark-ringed, his tie crooked. He had finally learned what panic felt like. The lawyer cleared his throat and began. We need to resolve operational authority. Until now, filings reflect Ms. Anders's designation in April. That has not been reversed. Legally, she retains control. No one interrupted. No one could. I let the silence stretch. They needed to sit in it. Finally, I spoke. I don't want your crown. I never did, but the truth belongs on paper, not in hashtags. And the truth is, I've held this authority for 6 months while being treated like a ghost. A few partners shifted, ashamed. I'll sign the transition today, I continued, on one condition: every junior staff member, every analyst, every assistant, protected. No firings to cover mistakes they didn't make. You want a clean exit? It starts with honesty. The lawyer nodded, already noting the clause. The CEO didn't look at me, but I saw his jaw tighten. He hated that I had the last word. Adam finally spoke, his voice small. Why are you doing this? You could ruin us. I turned to him. Because I'm not you. I don't burn things to sit in the ashes. I build and I leave when the work is done. The vote was unanimous. The filings were amended. My authority officially transitioned. But this time it was on record. Clean, correct, undeniable. My exit wasn't erasure. It was acknowledgement. When the meeting adjourned, I gathered my folder, stood, and looked around the room one last time. Take care of the people who actually keep this place running, I said softly. Then I walked out. Outside, the autumn air felt different, lighter, honest. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was free. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my cat purring beside me, glass of wine in hand. My phone buzzed with an email from a rival firm. Kelly, we'd love to talk. I smiled. Not from revenge, not from victory, from relief. Because the message of it all was clear. Thrones built on arrogance will always fall. But the quiet work, the steady work, outlasts everything. And for the first time in 15 years, the future was mine.